Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. And this, of course, is Police Off the Cuff. You know, there's some new things going on. No real, if you listen to the press, they say blockbuster stuff. But there's some new happenings in the Gilgo case, of course, with Rex Heuermann. There's enough things being thrown out there that can create doubt in the minds of jurors. However, I think the Suffolk County DA, Ray Tierney, and the Suffolk County task force that put together the Gilgo Beach task force has this case well in hand. So as things come up, we're going to discuss them today. And what does it mean to the prosecution of Rex Heuermann? And so far, there has been no court date or date set to begin this trial. So no one seems to be in a rush to get this trial going. And especially the defense, which will need so much time to go through all the discovery in this case, which is voluminous, beyond voluminous. I can't even imagine what it would be like to index all of the evidence they have in this case. So with that said, folks, hold on to your seats where you're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. And of course, off the cuff, the police off the cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped in Tampa Ranch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Folks, with me today is retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor, retired NYPD Sergeant Mike Geary. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Billy. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on, and good afternoon, everyone.
Well, Mike, you have a little bit of a different background today. I'm like a little confused, but it's okay. I'll get used to it.
Please.
So, you know, some of the new things in the case, of course, and it's being reported by some of the news stations. While Rex Heuermann is in jail, in the Suffolk County jail, of course, his mail is monitored, his calls are monitored, his visitors are monitored. And he's been corresponding with a man by the name of Jesperson is his last name. Keith Jesperson, better known as the Happy Face Killer. And he and Rex Heuermann have been writing letters to each other. And the Happy Face Killer, Keith Jesperson, is recommending that Rex comes clean and admits to the crimes that he's committed. Because then and only then can he sort of cut a deal. He's not going to cut any deal and get any less time. If in fact he is convicted, he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, as he should. But again, he's innocent until proven guilty. However, there are 4 cases known as the Gilgo 4, of course, and I'll put the pictures of the women up on the screen. And it's Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, Melissa Bartolome, and Amber Lynn Costello. And Maureen Brainerd Barnes, that case has just recently been added to the indictment based on the fact that the nuclear DNA came back and the evidence is solid, and they've built a solid case in regards to Maureen Brainerd Barnes. So now the Gilgo 4, or the women known as the Gilgo 4, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Melissa Bartolome, and Amber Lynn Costello, is a solid 4 people that the Suffolk County District Attorney, Ray Tierney, and the Gilgo Beach Task Force are confident that they have enough strong evidence to prosecute all 4 of these murders and to get a conviction. Your thoughts, Mike?
Bill, this case I don't expect to come to trial probably till maybe the earliest September, but I think if we could be a year out from a trial date. Scary for people to think about this. The public, you want swift and certain justice, but I think it really doesn't. It helps both sides. There's so much evidence. The prosecution has to make sure that they go over everything with a fine tooth comb. Same thing for the defense, and they're not in any hurry. But thinking about this case and the happy face killer, I could see where it's possible that it would be advantageous in the future for Heuermann to plead guilty and admit it, and then get some sort of deal with in terms of being able to see his family rather than way up by Buffalo or Rochester in a prison way up there. I could see him doing that, and I think for his future, he might be better off doing that rather than maintain innocence and then perhaps get convicted. So I can see that.
Mike, I think that there's a really good chance that he, of course, wants his day in court.
Oh, sure.
And he'll take the Gilgo 4 cases to trial. And then
Okay.
if he is convicted of those, which there's a very high likelihood that he will be, then the investigators need his help. I think they need his help to put together cases. In fact, if he committed any of the other 7 victims that they
Right.
have. And potentially, he may also have other victims that we and the police don't even know about.
Right.
So if he will cooperate after the trial of the Gilgo Beach 4, that will be a positive thing. And the only deal he can't cut a deal sentence-wise. And there's no death penalty to hold over his head because New York State does not have the death penalty. So you anti-death penalty folks that are out there, that is one bargaining chip that is a good thing about the death penalty, is that they can use that to get a convicted killer to come clean and use that as a bargaining chip. Okay, we won't go for the death penalty, but you're going to get life without parole if and only if you cooperate. But they don't have that bargaining chip anymore, and you can be anti-death penalty, you're pro-death penalty, but that bargaining chip is a huge thing for the prosecution to have.
Yeah, Billy, it's a sledgehammer that, the sword of Damocles that can hang over someone's head. And I could see this in the Koberger case because it may be far away, it may be delayed, we know by, 20 years, 30 years because of, mandatory appeals and things like that, state level and federal level. But at the end of the day, the idea that you could be given the magic needle, or in the case of the Koberger out in Idaho, a firing squad, it's good to have it, even if you're not in favor of the death penalty, because it actually is there as a huge bargaining chip, just saying, look, well, this is going to end someday. Either you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, or you could spend 20 years in prison and then be given the big needle, or be taken outside and killed with a firing squad. If you really value your life in any way, shape, or form, and want to be known and remembered, and where you could have your family and you may be able to visit with writers and authors and criminologists, then you better plead guilty and give everyone your cooperation when we need to ask you other questions about other unsolved crimes. But it's absolutely, I think, absolutely, I'm not a pro-death penalty person at all. I don't like it, but it is great to have on the books. And in this case, I would love to have had that on the books right now facing Rex Heuermann.
Absolutely. This is Shannon Gilbert, a picture of her on the screen right now. And this is the case that more or less was the catalyst to the Suffolk County Police discovering the other bodies that were the Gilgo 4. And if you look, at the map of Gilgo, this isn't a good rendition of it, but where Shannon Gilbert was found was like 3 or 4 miles away from where the Gilgo 4 were found. So her potentially investigation of her potential murder, which till this day is not listed as a murder. It's still being listed as undetermined. And that's why right now, the man who has been sort of fighting a one-man war with the Suffolk County Police and represents Shannon Gilbert's family is none other than attorney John Ray. And John Ray has been making his rounds of all the news stations, the podcasts, and sort of trying to get his message out there. And no matter what John Ray says, you have to admire his tenacity and his stick-to-itiveness, because he hasn't been getting paid for this case. He took this case of Shannon Gilbert. Her family has no money. And he stayed with this case for all these years and more or less kept it alive. And we all remember the press conference he did with former police commissioner Rodney Harrison in regards to some of the witnesses that have come forward to him and written sworn affidavits in regards to certain things. And he's alleging, and his witnesses are alleging, that Rex Heuermann has many more victims, and there's many more people that are witnesses against Rex Heuermann that also can point the finger at his wife, Asa Ellerup, as possibly being involved in this case. However, at this point, at this juncture, the Suffolk County Police under Ray Tierney and the Gilgo Beach Task Force wants none of this. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear about his witnesses, his affiants, and they're not entertaining it at this point. Could that potentially raise doubt if he's called as a witness in the trial against Rex Heuermann, and that the witnesses that he allegedly or brings forward, that the defense calls them? And could, again, that create more doubt that other people are involved besides Rex Heuermann? Mike?
Yeah, Billy, you got to admire his tenacity. As you say, he took on this case knowing that there was going to be no money, and he kept the case alive. And I can't imagine what it would be like to be, Johnny Ray and working with the previous administration out in Suffolk County. It must have been like banging your head against the wall. Luckily, we had Rodney Harrison and Tierney reforming the task force, and we got results very quickly. But I think that Johnny Ray's frustration is just from years of people not listening. Now, I can understand that. However, I don't think that there's going to be any change in classification for Shannon Gilbert's death. If there is no evidence so far, I doubt they'll ever surface any other or surface further evidence will surface. I just don't see it. However, I could see him being called by the defense, like you say. Once he starts talking about cases and experiences with the Suffolk County Police Department and the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office in the prior administration, I could see it's possible that he could throw a monkey wrench enough into the evidence at trial in defense to really, get maybe one or two jurors to say, you know what? Yeah, there's a lot of phone evidence. There's a lot of, DNA evidence. But, what about what John Ray has said? Maybe there is some sort of strange cover-up. Maybe the cover-up started under Burke's administration and it just continued. And therefore, that could amount to reasonable doubt. I could see that. Absolutely. I agree with 100%.
Mike, if I were Ray Tierney in this case, I would definitely entertain these witnesses, and if necessary and if possible, disqualify them as being either serious or not disqualify them, include them. But if they're affiants and if they can't vet the information they give, then investigate it and then disqualify it now, so that it doesn't become a problem later on in court, that this can create great doubt. And you can have detectives go on the stand and say, I interviewed so-and-so witness, and based upon her statement, which I'll read to you, I checked this and I checked that, and I was able to disqualify this information as not being credible. I checked this information and I found this out, and I found that's the only way you can eliminate doubt, because
Right.
they will create doubt if you don't slam dunk wise eliminate what they're saying.
Yeah, Billy, after that press conference that you alluded to, Phil, you and I were hoping that if there was ever any sort of doubt as to the sincerity of the people that, eventually signed affidavits, that would be taken care of under Rodney Harrison's watch and they would be vetted. I hope that happened. If it didn't, that would be a disservice to everyone. I hope it happened, and I hope they have decided whether or not these people have anything more to offer. But as you say, you got to take it seriously until you can disqualify it by saying, as a detective, I checked out all of these facts that are alleged in the affidavit, and we can't verify dates, times, locations, and things like that. So therefore, to us, it seems like it's an affidavit, in error. It's just, it's not accurate. And if you don't do that, you're right. Then you've got some sort of, you just have to hang up one juror, just have to hang up one in order to get a mistrial. And all you do is have to show some sort of reasonable doubt in one person's mind.
Absolutely. This is John Ray talking at, he was at a symposium where he brought up witnesses in the case that
Mrs. Elrup, her children were not in Atlantic City when they claimed to be.
We have 5 bombshells from the event hosted by an attorney for some of the Gilgo Beach victims. I'm Anjanette Levy. It's Wednesday, and this is Crime Fix. Rex Heuermann, the architect from Massapequa Park, Long Island, is charged with the murders of the Gilgo Four. They're Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, and Melissa Barthelemy. Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to all of the murders. He was just charged earlier this month with Maureen Brainerd Barnes' murder. One of the details released by attorney John Ray, who represents the family of Shannon Gilbert and other victims, is raising questions about information included in a bail document for Rex Heuermann. It said that Heuermann's wife, Asa Ellerup, and her children were in Atlantic City during the time period that Maureen Brainerd Barnes disappeared. It cited credit card records the DA used in bail documents to show Asa Ellerup was in Atlantic City on July 6, 2007. But Ray says he got different information from the hotel manager.
I spoke to the manager in the flagship hotel very recently. And the manager, who I befriended over the phone, looked up the stay of Mrs. Ellerup at that hotel and went, her time that she was there. And she looked it up for us and read it to us twice. We made sure that she committed to what she said. She was able to tell us not only the name Ellerup, she said, Asa Ellerup, Asa, she called it. And she was able to tell us the amount of the charge. It was $37.45. She read it to us twice from the computer. And she said, yes, they stayed here from July 17th to July 23rd. And she had no reason to lie to me or to make a mistake. We tried to make sure she told us the right thing by having her repeat it. And she read it right off their computer. If that's true, if her records are correct, then the district attorney is not correct.
I reached out to the Suffolk County DA's office, and a spokesperson told me they would have no comment on the claims made by John Ray. Ray also questioned how anyone could know the exact date the Gilgo Four were murdered.
And torturers keep people alive so they can enjoy the torture, especially this guy, who had abilities to keep these bodies in all kinds of places, including in his basement. while they were still alive, or his storage units, where you could fit a whole unit inside a unit. His storage units were so big. So when did these girls die? On or about July 9th? On or about July 9th? Could be July 13th. Could be July 6th. I don't know.
I want to take a minute to tell you
So, Mike, it's that is, no one knows the exact time of death.
Mhm.
So
Right.
trying to pin this down as like smoking gun evidence, first of all, I think that the Suffolk County District Attorney has documented the evidence of credit card usage at a certain time. So is it the same thing to interview a manager, how 11, 12 years later,
Mhm.
looking at a computer screen? I'm surprised the records are still available, and do this interview over the phone. I find that a little fugazi myself.
Billy, I'd feel a lot better about everything going on in the case on this point if the district attorney not only got subpoena documents from the credit card company, but also has documents that they subpoenaed from that hotel in Atlantic City. And I'd feel a lot better about this. But Johnny Ray does make a good point. On or about can mean a lot of things. And we don't even remember, for all of the 4 of these victims, we don't have causes of the cause of death. We know we believe the manner of death is homicide, but we don't. It's just I think it's listed as criminal homicide.
Yeah,
There's
well,
a lot.
they are guessing that it's asphyxia, but there is
Right.
They
Right.
can't determine that.
So this is troubling, and I think Johnny Ray is doing a service by pointing this out at this symposium, because he is correct about that on or about. So there may be some flexibility in terms of date and time that Asa Elzerup may have gotten to Atlantic City, and traveled home. He's bringing that up to show that this isn't a slam dunk case. It's very critical of the Suffolk County Police Department and ADA Tierney. So I'm not sure why he's doing that, but I think he's doing it really to just let the public know that if he could find contradictory information, then maybe there needs to be a little tightening up on the investigation. So in that way, I think it is a public service.
Absolutely.
also spoke about hairs found on the victims, one belonging to Asa Ellerup, another to Victoria Heuermann, Rex's daughter,
So that's,
who was just a child at the time.
so that, John Ray has pointed to that too, that the hairs that belong to Asa Ellerup and
Mhm.
now to Victoria Heuermann, he's pointing that makes them complicit in this.
That's a real leap.
That's a real stretch, and we have pointed to the fact that there's something called transfer evidence,
Mhm.
and these bodies, some of them were wrapped in burlap bags, and that's where the hairs were recovered from. So
Right.
the hairs from the bodies could have been transferred in the house and then
Right.
transferred to. That doesn't mean they were involved. So
No.
that's to us a little bit of a stretch, I think.
Yeah. If I understand the idea that if Asa Elzerup's hair is on 1 or 2 of the bodies, that could indicate that maybe she did participate in either the killing or the disposal of the bodies. However, the fact that there's a Victoria's hair and Victoria is on at least one of the bodies, and Victoria was a child, to me, really only points to the fact that the homicides happened in the house where you would expect that child's hair and not someplace else. So therefore, if it happened in the house because the child's hair is there, and then you find the mother's hair also, to me, that actually kind of works against the hypothesis that Asa is actually involved.
Greg Neely points out Locard's transfer principle. Yes, Dr. Edmund Locard.
Right.
By the way, my favorite word is surreptitiously. Well, good. You're learning something from watching the show. It makes me feel good. And so
Very
does it.
good.
It makes Professor Geary also. We all remember this press conference where John Ray introduced some sworn witnesses. And you see next to him, of course, is Rodney Harrison.
That collaboration has had fruit. And that fruit, at least, are the witnesses I'm going to be talking about today, as well as other evidence and information which we have shared together and with the police department, and therefore with the task force. So it is true to say that our cooperation has given rise to more substantial, valuable evidence in the entire case of the Long Island serial killer. So with that in mind, I'm very pleased that Commissioner Harrison has seen fit to open his mind and to do what I'm suggesting has been done, contrary to all those who have come before him. And he's approaching this case in the right way. He's the right man for the job, and he's done his job well. As to the witnesses, as to the evidence, in no particular order of importance, because so much of it is important, I have stood as a beacon as a civilian beacon to the people who are involved in this case to come and talk where they didn't want to approach the police out of.
I just wanted, this is a very long press conference, but what he talks about, the first incident he talks about, and I'm going to give it in sum and substance. I'm not going to give it verbatim in regards to how John Ray was talking about this. He talks about a couple, a female African-American woman, a male who he doesn't identify, but he identifies him as a New York City NYPD narcotics detective, who are both swingers and who frequented a club in New York City, the Trapeze Club. Of course, that doesn't exist anymore, that Rex Heuermann allegedly also frequented, and left a sign on the wall in the club, more or less advertising that he and his wife were a swinger and inviting people to come to their home in Massapequa Park. This is the story that John Ray told and sworn to by an affiant who was unnamed at this point. So the story goes on to say that the affiant with this narcotics detective, NYPD, picks up a woman in Manhattan. And this is 27 years ago, this incident, 27 years ago. And the woman, she clearly says in the interview the other night at this symposium, looked like Karen Vergata. And one of the questions we have right away with that, well, how was she identified? How did you identify her as looking like Karen Vergata? Was it from the myriad of pictures that were put out in the press? Did someone do it a professional way by showing a photo array and see if you could pick out the woman that you think you picked up that night? How was it done? I have a problem with this identification. And I think anyone in law enforcement knows the standards which we must deal with. And anytime anyone in law enforcement would show a single photo right away, that's a no-no. That is not how you make it's too suggestive. Oh, is this the person that you had in your car that night? That's not okay to do that. What you must do is something called a photo array and have that person's photo with 5 other photographs, or throw down 10 photographs on a table and have them pick out which photo it is. Who is the person? Because to show someone a single photo is way too suggestive and not reliable in regards to an eyewitness identification.
Yeah, Bill, and when you look at the picture that was circulating on the internet of Karen Vergata, it wasn't a contemporary picture of her like in her early 20s. It was a picture from like a freshman year in high school. And she's just got long hair, no makeup on or anything. So there's grave difficulties with that identification. I am sure the affiant is earnest and sincere and actually believes that what she wrote down, what she dictated in the law office and signed to, is absolutely 100% honest as far as she could remember. But I don't think it is accurate. And as you say, there was enough information given in that affidavit about a time and a place and a month, and a year where you could go back and try to corroborate those things. And if that isn't done or hasn't been done, and the only thing we have is the identification of a person as Karen Vergata from a high school picture, that's not going to fly. That doesn't even pass the basic test. You can't go into court, and Phil knows, and I know, you can't go into court and say that's a good identification. That doesn't work.
No, Pauline Buckles, Barbara Miller, he hasn't named his sources. So until he does, and they are investigated as bona fide leads, it's all conjecture right now. Pauline, you're right. There are standards that we must investigate things by. You can't just show, again, someone a single photograph and say, is that Karen Vergata? That's so suggestive as to disqualify the person that's given you that information. And look, we said at the top of this broadcast, we applaud John Ray for keeping the case of Shannon Gilbert alive and working so hard and trying to connect the dots to Rex Heuermann from other cases, potential cases that he may be involved in. So we're not criticizing that at all. The only thing we're criticizing is whether or not these witnesses are in fact reliable. Are they reliable? Do we have any idea where their information come from? And have legitimate investigators vetted this information and checked and rechecked the information they got to see if it is any possibility that it's correct? Mike.
Yeah, Billy, before this conference, I'm sure Rodney Harrison knew what John Ray was going to say, and I would hope that by the time of that press conference, John Ray talked about bearing fruit, his investigation bearing fruit. I would like to think that he actually turned over everything that he had in his files to Rodney Harrison so that they could actually contact these people and vet these people. You can't vet these people if they remain anonymous. And therefore, what you got then is a story, but you don't have evidence. People think a statement is evidence. It's not evidence until it can be verified, vetted. You and Phil have done this a million times in your careers. And so therefore, by this point, either it's evidence and because it's been vetted, or it's a story that someone sincerely said that turns out not to be accurate. And that would not be good for this investigation whatsoever, because it actually could be a distraction from the investigation.
100%. And this is John Ray on Banfield.
Evidence linking Heuermann to Shannon and possibly to other victims too. And that attorney is John Ray. He's here live with me. What is the definitive evidence, John Ray, linking Shannon to Rex Heuermann?
I wouldn't call it definitive, but what I would call it is important and enough to bear further investigation as opposed to no investigation. There's several pieces of evidence. They're all circumstantial, but substantial. And so...
Okay, it's a good teaser.
So he's talking about other evidence that they have that's circumstantial.
They are such things as that Shannon had, according to one of our witnesses.
I'm going to take this off the screen. It's not loading right. What he's talking about, again, Mike, is very circumstantial evidence that allegedly Rex Heuermann met Shannon Gilbert at a hotel, met at the Sayville Motor Lodge,
Okay.
and she was picked up by a cab driver. This was also reported by a witness who has not been vetted again. And John Ray is freely admitting that this is important evidence, but not, I forget the word exactly he used, but evidence that can be sort of verified. So it's really very much circumstantial.
Now, circumstantial evidence can be very, very convincing. And that, so there's no problem with that at this point when I'm analyzing this. But the fact is, it is possible that maybe Rex Heuermann, was in contact with her, or used her for, and hired her a month before, 2 months, 6 months. We don't know. It's possible. It's possible. But that doesn't make him her killer. And because we don't even know if she was killed. All evidence points to the fact that it was unfortunately a tragic set of circumstances that night, because we do know who she was with, Miss Gilbert was with, the night she disappeared into that swamp. We do know who he was with, and that was a tremendous amount of legwork done. Now, so therefore, it's circumstantial that he has, but I don't think it's very convincing at this point, because, again, it's so far in the past, and time, dates, and places have to be verified. If they can't be, then it can't be used as evidence, and therefore, then it remains as a good, well-intentioned person giving information that they think is valuable and accurate, but may not turn out to be just that.
Yeah, Mike, that's what I have. And as you know, John Ray has contacted us, and we're going to have him on a show shortly.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested in asking him some of these questions. And I think in a big way, many of the questions, the unanswered questions, really will make the police work harder. The investors work much harder than they already have, and I'm sure they're not happy with it. And the sad thing about this case is that this case is the task force, which maybe you could say 18 to 24 months ago was formed. I don't have the exact date it was formed. And that's really when things started to happen in this case. That's when and then you could think of all the things that happened before that. And not specifically, there was some good work done before that, but, we think of Burke, Chief Burke, and the corruption in the Suffolk County Police and all of that stuff. And it just taints this entire case, where people on the outside looking at this case view it as like, oh, God, of course the police, they're still corrupt. No, they're not. They're really working hard on this case. And I think you have to look at it from two different venues. One of what happened prior to the task force, and then look at it in a different lens as what has happened after the task force was formed.
Absolutely. And I understand John Ray's frustration. I can picture this guy trying to work with the previous administration under Chief Burke and whatever task force or one or two detectives were involved in this. And that was pitiful, the way that the investigation was done, because then the evidence of that is because when Rodney Harrison comes in and Ray Tierney's there, they form the task force. Within like 6 weeks, the name Heuermann pops up. It pops up because of the car and the pimp and the witness that particular evening. And so, yeah, I could see John Ray being very, very untrusting of the department and thinking the department was a bunch of, Keystone cops. Absolutely. But you're right. That was then, this is now. Suddenly, if there was still corruption and, idiocy within this Suffolk County Police Department, you would not have had Harrison come in and then within 6 weeks get Heuermann. That name would pop up. It would not pop up. If there was actual corruption, that file would have been lost years ago. That named him, that identified him and that car. Said the big 6'6" guy, that ogre, and his Chevy Avalanche, whatever it was. So therefore, it's a very different set of circumstances now. But I do understand John Ray's frustration. That is for years. I mean, that's just frustration.
100%. This was the picture, of course,
That's it.
of Karen Vergata, which, was circulated all over the press. And I know there's other pictures, but my question was, is this the picture that was used to identify her by the witnesses that came to John Ray and signed the affidavits? Because if this was a one-on-one picture, I mean, it looks like, a young 16, 17-year-old girl, high school girl. And if that was what was used to make the identifier, then it's not very good, because, as I said, it was disseminated all over the press.
Mhm.
Everyone had it. Everyone had seen it. And when the affiant, that's who we could call her, the first witness that John Ray spoke about, the African-American woman with the boyfriend who was an NYPD narcotics detective, and the story they told too about the narcotics detective, the male, had sex with Rex Heuermann, and then she said she had sex with Rex Heuermann, and Karen Vergata, or the woman who she thought was Karen Vergata, was in the house. She was, I mean, the story was, like, to me, all over the place. And perhaps when we have John Ray live on the show and interviewing him, we can ask him some of these more difficult questions that we're asking each other right now.
Right. I'm wondering if even if Suffolk County and the task force never actually was able to, check out some of the facts in the case, I'm wondering if, John Ray himself was able to check out with his own resources some of this information. And therefore, when you're presenting it to the Suffolk County Police Department, you may be able to say, look, this is the affidavit, and I've checked out, these 3 or 4 things. So please take this seriously. Because it's a law, it was like the 1996, I think it was, or 94. It was a long time ago.
It was 96 or 97.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you know, just trying to remember things from 2 or 3 years ago, there's blanks in your memory and blank spaces and things like that. So we'll see about, what I'm sure John Ray at this point knows what Suffolk County has or has not been able to verify. And I'd like to find out from him, how many of the affidavit facts in those several affidavits that he submitted, how many of them actually are considered, actual trustworthiness and reliable to be used as evidence at Heuermann's trial.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, hit the like button, share us with your friends, your family members, and talk about us all over the world. And if you want to contribute to us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And we also have YouTube channel membership with, count 'em, 5 different levels. And the Patreon and the YouTube help keep this show going, and have us pay for some of the things that are necessary to bring the best possible things we can bring to you on the show. We mentioned before, John Ray is coming on the show tomorrow, and tomorrow night, and we're going to put out the time tomorrow, early tomorrow morning sometime. But we're looking forward to interviewing John Ray. And as we said, he's been a tireless advocate for Shannon Gilbert's family. And, we have many questions. Not everything he brings up do we take with a grain of salt. We have questions, and we're looking forward to asking John Ray some of the tougher questions that maybe some of the news media doesn't ask him. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, he's got so much information, so much background working with the Gilbert family for, a decade, almost a decade. So therefore, and having to deal with the old administration, new administration, I'd really like to know if the new administration has really truly been receptive and taken those affidavits to heart, and were able to actually have access to all of those people, and therefore determined whether or not they're reliable or not. Because that's, if true, that really serves the public's interest, and give us a better idea of what was going on in the Heuermann home. Because we don't know the full story yet. We may never know the full story yet. We know enough of it to charge him with 4 homicides, but we don't know the complete story. And the more information we get, every little piece is a piece in the large jigsaw puzzle that is, this case from start to finish. So he's doing a great service, and I hope that the information is actually beneficial to the investigators.
On the screen right now is Ray Tierney, who is the Suffolk County District Attorney. He's a former Brooklyn District Attorney or Assistant District Attorney. He had worked with Rodney Harrison when Rodney was with the NYPD. And he's sort of old school prosecutor. He likes to keep things close to the vest. The most information we ever got, of course, was in July when the arrest happened. And then, of course, we were issued that 32-page, which I always encourage everyone that follows this case to have that printed up, the 32-page bail application that describes the people's case, the people versus Rex Heuermann. It describes the case that they have. And it answers a lot of questions because, of course, in this case, there are many difficult concepts, burner phones, cell phone pinging, cell phone dumps, searches of computer hard drives, DNA, mitochondrial DNA, nuclear DNA, all things that during the lifetime of this investigation, DNA has made a tremendous scientific leap forward so that DNA that once could only be identified through the mitochondrial DNA process is now be able to be identified through nuclear DNA, which has billions of more markers that makes the evidence that much more valuable. So we appreciate all of these things. So besides all of the interviews of people, the identifiers, the mistakes made, we talk about this, the Chevy avalanche, and people mentioned that in the case against Rex Heuermann, and then they did a Google Earth search, and lo and behold, found a picture that you see right there of the avalanche parked right next to his house. And that was from Google Earth. So that information was in the bail application. And just when we see some of the snafus in identifying that vehicle, and the fact that when they founded the task force, it took a New York State police, a female New York State police investigator, a couple of days, and she found that car and found the owner, and then found Google Earth that it was parked next to who turned out to be the perpetrator, Rex Heuermann, charged with murders of the Gilgo 4. They found that car, and that was a mystery. And it was as simple as running the vehicle incorrectly in the lawman database in the New York State Department of Motor Vehicle database. And someone ran it a different way, and it came up, and they found the car belonging to the serial killer. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, it just points out the competency of the new task force under Rodney Harrison and ADA Tierney just points at how quickly that trooper was able to come up with the correct information within only like 6 weeks of the formation of the task force. Really just highlights the incompetency of the previous, investigation that was done. And that does give people, pause for concern because, they were, it seemed not really able to get, investigate their way out of a paper bag. Sorry to say it, but, that's how it seemed. But the new task force was able to do this very quickly, and that was a great service. The one thing I have to say on behalf of the old task force under Chief Burke was that the county, maybe not them because it's probably maybe it was in a different part of the police department, but the hair evidence was maintained properly, categorized, maintained, retrieved. And therefore, without that, we'd be in a very different place. But having those hairs be properly stored and available, not only years ago, but now with nuclear DNA technology, to actually get greater information than we ever had before. If that had not been stored properly or been lost or degraded in any way, and DNA can degrade, we'd be in a very different place. But that's the one thing I could say that the previous task force got right. Other than that, no, they were Keystone Cops.
Paul J., thank you for the £4 super sticker. Very much appreciated. Love your little meme there. I want to put this up on the screen. This is page 7 of the bail application in regards to Rex Heuermann. I'm going to read from it. Amber Costello was last seen alive on September 2nd, 2010, leaving her residence at 1112 America Avenue, West Babylon during the late evening hours. At that time, she was believed to be working as a sex worker. On September 1st, 2010, the day prior to the disappearance of Amber Costello, Ms. Costello's cell phone was contacted by a burner cell phone. On September 1st, 2010, this burner cell phone had communications with the Costello phone at approximately 11:33 p.m. and 11:34 p.m. During those communications, the burner cell phone connected to cell site towers in West Amityville and Massapequa Park. Thereafter, the burner cell phone traveled to West Babylon in proximity to the residence of Amber Costello and had contact with the Costello phone at approximately 12:05 a.m. on September 2nd, 2010. What I'm getting to is, in this, they describe Rex Heuermann. Based upon interviews, that client was described as a large white male, approximately 6'4" to 6'6" in height, in his mid-40s, with dark bushy hair and big oval-style 1970s type glasses. A witness described him police as appearing like an ogre. Remember, we've heard that word a couple of times. Furthermore, a witness noticed a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche parked in the driveway of the residence. According to the witnesses following the ruse, this client said he was just her friend, tell her I'll give her a call, and walked out the front door. Thereafter, at approximately 1:18 a.m. on September 2nd, after the ruse had been perpetrated, the burner cell phone sent a text message to the Costello phone, which stated, "That was not so nice to do. Credit for next time." Phone records showed that the burner phone was located in Massapequa Park within 2 minutes of this text message being sent. Now, we also know that the next day, Amber Costello met with him, and that was the last time she was ever seen alive. So just in that little passage of this bail application, there's 2 pieces of, besides an eyewitness identification, right, there's 2 other pieces of solid evidence: the identification or the spotting of the Chevrolet Avalanche and the call into Amber Costello's cell phone using the burner phone that upon arrest was identified as belonging to Rex Heuermann. So all of that type of evidence is just, I mean, it's just incredible evidence to have. And that is the type of evidence when you present it to a jury. How do they argue with that? How does a defense attorney say, oh, that doesn't mean anything? How does that happen, Mike?
Yeah, it's very difficult to do because the science of DNA and telephone technologies, I mean, it's well established. There's really no arguments about it. The eyewitness, although and Phil know, as investigators, sometimes eyewitness identifications are not good and people's memories fade, whereas the technology, once you've got it, there is no issue of human emotions. But it would be wonderful at trial, if this goes to trial, to have the eyewitness say, yeah, that guy sitting over there, like 6'6", 300 pounds. I mean, there's not too many guys like that fit that description that aren't playing in the NFL right now. So therefore, that would be excellent because that really humanizes the fact that Amber Costello did not have a chance. And this is the guy, and the car that was not the most popular model ever produced. And it was a first generation, and it's the color, and we can see it now in front of his house. A defense attorney is going to have a hard time, with the cell phone technology, the DNA technology is going to be really, really difficult. The only thing the defense attorney can do is maybe point out that and this isn't going to get you anywhere, not really too far, is to try to discredit the eyewitness identification and say, well, maybe, you've seen Rex Heuermann's picture all over the place. And how could you remember somebody in the evening, remember, late at night in the dark, many years ago? And that's about the only thing I could see that a defense attorney in that particular circumstance could actually attack, would be that. But everything else, I don't see it.
Mike, I just want to also say something like tomorrow night, and I'll give everyone the time tomorrow. We're going to interview John Ray. Is going to come on the show. And of course, Phil's going to be here, myself, and of course, Professor Mike. And I just want everyone to understand, we're not looking to discredit John Ray, but we also just don't want to allow him to present evidence that if we were police officers and investigators, detectives putting forth evidence, we get questioned and cross-examined. And we always mention that term, the when, where, who, what, how, and why. And if that's not answered by a witness, then a defense attorney or a prosecutor will rip that witness to shreds. And as police officers, as law enforcement personnel, we knew that we would always have to answer those questions, the when, where, who, what, how, and why. And that's some of the things that we're going to want to ask John Ray tomorrow night. And I'm looking forward to it. And John Ray, of course, is a very likable guy. I don't think that, he wouldn't be so popular with the news media if he wasn't. Folks, I want to do a quick thing. If you're looking for a great attorney in the New York metropolitan area, then Joe Murray is your man. Joe Murray is a retired police officer who is now a defense attorney in the New York metropolitan area. You can reach Joe on his cell phone at 718-514-3855. Email him at joe@jmurray-law.com, or go on his website, jmurray-law.com. Not only is Joe a fantastic defense attorney, but a huge supporter of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. And there he is, a picture of Joe saying, "What do you want from me?" I love that picture. So, Mike, looking forward to tomorrow night. I think it's going to be an excellent interview, and I think that we're not going to try to play gotcha with John Ray.
No.
But we want to, also ask him some questions, perhaps that hasn't been asked of him by the mainstream media, of which we are not part of. But I think we want to just ask him a few questions. And, one of the interesting things also is that these two gentlemen, one is on the left is Vesmetev, and the other one is Robert Macedonio. And Vesmetev now represents the children of Rex Heuermann and Asa Ellerup, and Robert Macedonio represents Asa Ellerup. Vesmetev used to work with John Ray, was an associate of John Ray. So this small world comes together. And, and then John Ray, of course, he's known for his flamboyant dress, his unusual hats. As you can see here, there he is with another one. I'm not inventing these hats, and not that it has anything to do with his competence as an attorney. But again, we're looking forward to interviewing Mike. I know you have to go. Final words.
Final words. I'm looking forward to talking to Johnny Ray. He's the kind of guy that you'd like to sit next to in a bar, have a scotch and water, and shoot the stuff for a while, because he's got so much background information in this case that probably half of it hasn't even gotten to the press. And I'd like to ask him all kinds of little questions about how he, from everything from the start of his involvement to the present. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow night's broadcast. And I'm just asking everyone, please tune in, because he's a great storyteller, and we're really looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Folks, so tomorrow night, and we'll give you the time tomorrow morning when I put the flyer out for the show. But tomorrow night, we'll be interviewing attorney John Ray in connection with the Gilgo Beach case and potentially new evidence in the Rex Heuermann case. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in today. Have a great day, and God bless.
Good afternoon.
One episode just ain't enough.